which has 3 times as many people as Chicago. They had 500 carjackings to Chicago's 1,800 carjackings. And Chicago has 1/3 the population. Murders, there were over 800 in Chicago and about 450 in New York. Now, obviously, none of those are good statistics, but we always look at New York as the pariah. Well, what do those numbers tell you? We have the most violent city in the United States of America in the city of Chicago, and it's just to the north of my jurisdiction.
There you have it. That is not a Republican in the state of Illinois. That is a Democrat in the state of Illinois talking about the danger, the crime, the violence that is rooted right here in the Midwest, in Chicago. People want to talk about New York. People want to talk about crazy crime-ridden cities on the East and the West Coast. But Chicago, St. Louis knows a little bit about this as well, ridden with crime, and it seems as though the people in charge are more interested in winning political victories than protecting their constituents from it, which is why I'm very happy to, on the Annie Frey Show today, welcome back into the studio, Tom DeVore. Tom, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So, when I think about law and order, and I think about my friends who are voting, I'm 38, got 4 kids. Raising kids is the number one thing that I have to do on a given day, but I'm working hard along with my husband, who's a public school teacher, to provide my kids an opportunity. If they're not safe, we have nothing. And in the state of Illinois and across the country right now, it seems as though the criminals have been made into the victims, and the victims are being used against themselves for political purposes of other people.
No doubt about it.
So tell me, the Safety Act. We've heard a lot about the Safety Act. We're sitting in here on a regular basis. It just happened again on Fox News. It pops up that there are people who are non-traditional Republican voters who are starting to turn their attention away from the Democrat Party. Tom DeVore, you're running for Attorney General in the state of Illinois. You're a Republican. The first thing I want to ask you is, what are the duties and the responsibilities of the Attorney General of the state of Illinois?
One of the primary duties is to keep the people safe. Keep them safe in a variety of different ways. One, keep them safe from government abuse and government overreach, government corruption, which is a conversation of itself that we've had a failure of the last few years, but ultimately to also work in conjunction with the state's attorneys of the state of Illinois to keep people safe from crime.
So what? Because I don't know that a lot of people in Illinois right now know the name Kwame Rowe. They don't know this guy.
He's been hiding for 3-4 years. Of course, they don't know who he is.
Well, in the Democrat-controlled state of Illinois, the very deep blue state of Illinois, at least on the political surface, a lot of people have been, because J.B. Pritzker has told them to stay home and to stay away. He's used a lot of his authority as he sees fit to mandate the people of the state of Illinois to do what he thinks that they need to do during a pandemic. And I kind of wonder where the Attorney General was in all of that. Was there a role that you as the Attorney General would have played during that pandemic?
Absolutely, I would have played a role. And we actually, when Kwame Rowe and I debated this up in Chicago a couple of weeks ago, that question got asked of him, and he started pontificating about how the government's policies were necessary from a medical perspective to keep people safe. And I kind of chuckled a little bit. And when it got to be my turn to respond, I said, with all due respect, Mr. Attorney General, your role is not to be a medical expert. Your role is to make sure that the governor's actions are lawful and constitutional. And I'm like, you have already admitted to people finally that it was a fair legal question of whether the governor had those powers or not. And you failed the people by not defending them against the governor's overreach. You actually defended the governor. And I'm like, unfortunately, there was no independent thought coming from you because Governor Pritzker is your top financial contributor at about $4 million. So allowing the governor to exceed his authority was what he did because of financial reasons. And when I was asked by the commentator, well, what would you have done differently to keep people safe? I made it very clear. My job is to keep them safe from tyranny. My job's not to keep them safe from a virus. So I would have insisted that the governor, to the extent he believed his policies were necessary, go to the legislature and let the legislature craft policy and adopt laws the way that the foundational principles were intended. That's what I would have done, and it's what would have happened in our state if I was the Attorney General.
And you'd think if those were good policies that the governor, J.B. Pritzker, with a supermajority of Democrats in the House and a supermajority of Democrats in the state Senate, if it was good policy, that was the friendly legislature to get those good policies through.
Yeah, if you're interested in the rule of law, but Governor Pritzker being a billionaire trust fund guy, the law doesn't apply to him. He does whatever he thinks is right, and he justifies it in his own mind, which is the definition of a tyrant, in my opinion.
So we're speaking with Tom DeVore. He's the Republican candidate for the Attorney General in the state of Illinois. We are friends here on this show. We've had Eric Schmidt on quite a bit as the Attorney General for the state of Missouri, and we've seen him advocate for the people of Missouri, specifically when it comes to freedoms and liberties and making sure that, like you said, the people of Missouri are insulated from a tyrannical government, that those liberties are preserved. I'm curious if the status quo remains the same. There's a red wave coming next Tuesday. How tall does this red wave have to be in order to flood the state of Illinois? Pretty tall. If the status quo stays the same, if we have J.B. Pritzker win re-election, if the Attorney General, the Democrat Attorney General, stays the same, if the supermajority remains in the General Assembly in Springfield, Tom, tell me, who is there advocating for the Illinois citizen?
Nobody. That's the reality. And one of the issues that I'm glad you brought that up in that context deals with now the conversation about the COVID vaccine for children, because the CDC, as everybody just saw, created that as a national recommendation. Now it's up to each state to determine whether or not they want to add the COVID vaccine as a requirement for children in public education. And the governor, trying to deflect because he doesn't want to talk about that, was on camera about a week ago saying, well, that's up to the legislature of Illinois. It's up to the legislature. He said it 3 times within 30 seconds. And I laughed, one, going, okay, how many times has he ever asked the legislature for anything? But ironically, what the governor, he's either ignorant or he's clever.
Or both.
In Illinois, the Illinois legislature has already delegated the authority to add requirements for vaccines in schools to the Department of Health. The legislature did it properly. And under the Illinois Administrative Code, under Title 77, there are 12 required vaccinations that the Department of Health has for children in school. If they want to add a 13th one, all they have to do is propose an administrative rule change. And you know who controls that? The governor, by his or her appointment to the director of the Department of Health. So if Governor Pritzker remains governor, he's going to have who he wants leading the Department of Health, who can, by rule, very easily add the COVID vaccine, and there's nothing that the General Assembly today could do. Could they change a law? Potentially. But the governor has the authority right now to add COVID vaccine as a requirement. He doesn't need the legislature to do that. He's trying to, again, deflect and not have to talk about that before the election. So that's why it's important not to reelect him for many reasons. One is, he's already said, I'm going to follow the science, whoever he believes is the science.
He's been wandering around trying to find the science for
Political
quite some
science
time.
He's really good with, but I don't know about medical science. But yeah, he would absolutely do that. So to the extent people don't want their children forced the vaccine to go to public school, don't vote for J.B. Pritzker.
Yeah, Darren Bailey is a great answer to a huge problem that we have in the state of Illinois. I fully support him here on the Annie Frey Show. You mentioned that he has said that it wouldn't be up to him. He's basically doing the Pontius Pilate thing, passing it off to somebody else. The legislature, as you're saying, the Department of Public Health in the state of Illinois would step in. He certainly made a big commitment to not sign a gerrymandered map before his previous election.
Yes, he did.
And boy, when I look at the Etch-a-Sketch that is the state of Illinois and congressional districts and how they absolutely have drawn Illinois to represent Democrats even more and disenfranchise Republicans, it's hard for me to look at what J.B. Pritzker says and take a word of it seriously.
You can't. I mean, you're right on the issue of gerrymandering. He made that very express commitment, and then he didn't follow through with it. But again, I don't like picking on him too much, but I do because he gives us so much fodder. He was born a billionaire. He does not, his word, people that grow up poor like myself, if when I was growing up trying to make my way, if my word was no good, I would have never been able to become successful because people wouldn't have done anything, worked with me, and trusted me. When you're born a billionaire, your word means nothing because you buy loyalty and you buy friendships and you buy your way through life. So he doesn't even care about people think about his word because it doesn't matter. He just buys his way out of it.
We're speaking here with Tom DeVore, and he is running for Republican Attorney General position. And I want to make sure that you understand that you can follow him at tomdevore.com. One of the things that I constantly am looking at, one of the things that I am frequently frustrated about when it comes to the way Illinois politics are managed. Here's the thing. You're going to see on a regular basis that Illinois is not a competitive race. You're going to see on a regular basis that it's like the polls, they don't even exist there. And I was looking a little bit earlier on Real Clear Politics just to see, okay, fine. Nobody's talking about Illinois polls. Nobody is out there working to show to the world what is happening in the state of Illinois. And this is what I realized here. So I pulled up Real Clear Politics, and it shows that the Emerson poll from September 21st to September 23rd is Pritzker plus 15. So that was the September, third week in September. In October 10th to October 11th, it shows Pritzker plus 15 on the Sun-Times poll. But then we get to October 20th to October 24th. The Emerson poll once again. It's plus 9. That's what we have learned in this amount of time. 1 month has passed, and that lead is 6 points changed. And if you think about a wave election happening right now, if you think about the fact that everywhere across the country, we're seeing these polls trending heavily in the direction of Republicans. That is going to happen in the state of Illinois. The question will be, how much runway do we have left on this particular issue, in this particular state, in order to close that gap? You matter in this whole thing. Your conversations with people that you know absolutely do matter. We're going to talk more with Tom DeVore right after this break. Go to tomdevore.com and learn more about his candidacy for the Illinois Attorney General. Of course, firing Pritzker and hiring Darren Bailey to represent the people of the state of Illinois is an amazing thing that you can do. But you want to keep that governor's office in check no matter who's in it. Tom DeVore's your guy. Let's take a quick break. More with Tom DeVore in studio on the Annie Frey Show when we return.
Like the 4th of July. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name at the top of his list. And the Statue of Liberty started shaking her fist.
This is the Annie Frey Show.
And it's gonna be here.
Follow Annie on Twitter at Annie Frey Show.
Ringing her bell, and it'll feel like the whole wide world is raining down on you. Brought to you courtesy of the red, white, and blue.
97.1 FM Talk is excited to once again participate in the Florissant Veterans Day Parade this Sunday, hosted by the City of Florissant and the Veterans Coalition. Join us for the Veterans Day Parade. It's this Sunday in Florissant.
If you're considering an annuity as part of your retirement plan, we need to talk. Hi, I'm Bob Stockdale, Senior Vice President Investments with the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel and host of On the Money, Saturday mornings at 11 on 97.1 FM Talk. Annuities can be a useful tool for some retirement investors, but not all annuities are created equal. Every week, we meet clients who own complex annuities that don't suit their needs and, in some cases, actively undermine their retirement plan. Before you purchase an annuity, get a second opinion from the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel. Requesting a consultation is free of charge. To request a free consultation, contact us at clearpathinvesting.com. That's clearpathinvesting.com, or call us at 636-695-2650. That's clearpathinvesting.com or 636-695-2650. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member NYSE and SIPC.
At Shane Company, we know that love and meaning can be captured in a beautiful piece of fine jewelry. That's why we offer so many options to make your holiday gift even more personal. Jewelry with a birthstone makes a wonderful gift because it holds so much significance. Shane Company has unique styles with birthstones for every month of the year. Diamonds, cultured pearls, rubies, opals, and more. Why not create a necklace with her birthstone and then add a charm for good luck? A necklace with the first letter of her name lets her know how important she is to you. And our gold letter charms sparkle with diamond accents. Or select an engravable style. Give your loved one a bracelet inscribed with the place you met so they'll never forget that moment. Or capture your strong connection with a promise ring inscribed with both of your initials. Our jewelry consultants will make it easy. At Shane Company, we give you so many ways to create gifts infused with meaning. Treasures they'll have forever.
Now you have a friend in the jewelry business. Shane Company and ShaneCo.com.
Laura Michael Insurance, I want you to understand, if you are somebody who is looking to improve your insurance situation, or if you don't know anything about it, you need somebody who cares and who understands and who is going to prioritize you in the whole insurance business. LauraMichaelInsurance.com, Laura, Michel, insurance.com. I want you to understand her commitment and the fact that she has been in this business of prioritizing customers, helping small business owners that need to control their insurance costs because they can get out of control, helping small business with business continuations. What happens to a business if there's something like a key employee bounces and you need to figure out what you're going to do in order to make that situation continue? Laura Michael Insurance is the place to go. I know Laura personally. She is committed to prioritizing the absolute best situation for you, and she's done it again and again and again. She's in the St. Charles area. She'll help manage risk for families and business owners. She offers auto, home, life, and commercial insurance. 25 years of experience, folks, for Laura Michael, and you're in great hands. I promise you that. She can provide security and the peace of mind. Learn all you need to know online at LauraMichaelInsurance.com.
Paid for by Blaine for Congress.
I'm Blaine Lutkemeyer, and I approve this message.
We've seen some price increases. Some folks have raised worries that this could be a sign of persistent inflation, but that's not our view.
Reality is, inflation is now at a 40-year high, costing the typical family over $700 more every month just to stay even. That's the Biden extremist tax you pay every day. You pay it at the gas pump because of the extremist war against American energy, shutting down pipelines and using red tape to stop new development. You pay it in the devastation in your retirement account. You pay it in the border crisis and out-of-control crime wave. And now, they've driven America into a recession. Our most powerful weapon to stop them is our vote. It's in our hands to stop the damage they're doing to our families and America. November 8th, vote.
For details and a list of all station contest rules, visit www.971talk.com/rules. This is the Annie Frey Show. Follow Annie on Twitter @Annie Frey Show.
Baby's black balloon makes her fly. Almost fell into that hole in your life. And you're not thinking about tomorrow, 'cause you were the same as me.
So the efforts that we're taking are to make sure that we keep low-level offenders out of the criminal justice system, but then there is a determination made about someone's threat to public safety and whether or not they're willful flight risk. That one of the memes that's going around suggests that second-degree murderers or kidnappers won't be held in custody. Again, as a scurrilous lie that plays on the worst fears that individuals have. But what we're trying to do is make communities more safe by engaging in stripping systemic racism from the criminal justice system. We don't really have a criminal justice system. We have a criminal legal system. And right now, that criminal legal system is not acting on behalf of all of its participants. So that's why we have to have a system. That's why we focus on equity, fairness and equity in this criminal justice system.
So we're focusing on fairness and equity in the justice system. That sounds like hogwash to me, but I am not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be one on the radio, but we happen to have one in the studio with us. Tom DeVore hanging out with us in the 97.1 studios. And boy, is he getting a show here off the air because we were experiencing a few technical difficulties, and it is... We're doing our best, folks, so hang in there with us. He's the Republican candidate for the Illinois Attorney General position. And, you know, equity, is that what this is all about? The Safety Act? When you hear that, we're going to be more equitable?
It's about guilt. Who was that person talking?
LG Sims, 17th District Senator.
He must not be a lawyer either, because everything he said was an error. But it's guilt. I got asked this question the other day, Annie, about why did they pass this law? And I said guilt. When they asked to explain myself, there has been a failure for certain in government to the extent that it's made little to no successful effort in addressing crime in our marginalized communities. There's a lot of crime there. It's because we haven't sufficiently invested in those communities and taken their socioeconomic status seriously. It'd be no different if we didn't invest in other communities with different colors of people. We don't invest in our minority communities. If we don't invest in a white community, we're going to have crime too. That's a reality. People don't like to talk about it. It makes them uncomfortable. So what our government's trying to do out of guilt for their failures to address these issues in our communities is they're going soft on crime, going, yeah, there's crime there because, we haven't done these other things well. So let's just go soft on crime. That makes us all feel good and alleviate that guilt. But it's going to make it worse. When Mr. Sims just said that crimes like second-degree murder, kidnapping, etc., they won't be detained, they will not be detained. That's absolutely what the statute says. 725 ILCS 5/110-6.1, Mr. Sims. Kidnapping, robbery, every drug offense in the criminal code. If someone is accused of those crimes, the state's attorney will not seek detention of that person because the statute doesn't allow it. And they will be released with a promise to return at a later date. It is 100% true. It's unequivocal. It's not even a question. 100, 102 of the state's attorneys in this state actually say that's the correct interpretation.
But Tom DeVore, I hear Governor Pritzker say that if they should be detained, then the prosecutors will make the case and they'll be detained.
But they can only make the case if you fall within the 7 categories of offenses in this new statute. Because the question your state's attorney will say is this an offense for which I can even make the case? You with me? Mm-hmm. If it's outside the categories, they can't make the case. So that provision of the statute that I just gave you, it has 7 categories of crimes within it. And if you are accused of any of those crimes in those 7 categories, the state's attorney can then go make the case to the judge that you should be detained. If you commit any other offense in our criminal code outside those categories, the state never even gets to make the case. They just have to release you with a promise to return.
How does second-degree murder not fit in one of those 7 categories?
Here's why. Here's where they made the mistake. The first category of offenses is what's called forcible felonies. But then it says forcible felonies for which probation is not an option. So if it's a serious crime like murder, if you're convicted of murder, you cannot get probation. You're going to prison. But if you get convicted of second-degree murder, you can get probation. So in this statute, when they made it conjunctive, serious felony for which you can't get probation, they forgot about all the other serious felonies for which you can get probation. Robbery is a serious felony.
Right.
But you can get probation under our laws in Illinois. Kidnapping, you can get probation. Now, aggravated kidnapping, you cannot. You will go to prison if you're convicted of aggravated kidnapping.
Can you explain to me, I'm thinking about my children and the different kinds of kidnapping. I'm not okay with any of them. What's the difference?
Well, what's the difference between kidnapping and aggravated kidnapping? There's a half a dozen or so aggravating factors. One of them is age. So if someone is kidnapped and they're 13 years of age or younger, that is aggravated kidnapping in the state of Illinois, and if you're convicted, you go to prison. If it's just straight old kidnapping because your child's 14 or older, that's not aggravated kidnapping in and of itself. That's only regular kidnapping, of which if you're convicted, you may go or may be put on probation. So what they did, they made a mistake where they left out all of these categories of serious felonies that you potentially can get probation for. Did they do that on purpose? Probably not. It's because they passed this law at 4 o'clock in the morning without letting experts like state's attorneys and law enforcement participate in the production of this law. They absolutely messed that up. So it hinges upon the seriousness of the offense, but also whether or not probation is an option upon conviction. And if probation is an option, you cannot detain them. The state's attorney never sees the judge. You've heard Governor Pritzker say, well, the judge has discretion, the judge has discretion. It only matters if a person accused of the crime is actually in front of the judge. But for all of these crimes that aren't within the categories, and the biggest category, Annie, is every drug offense in our criminal code. The state's attorney will never put you in front of the judge. So if you're going through Illinois and you get pulled over on Interstate 55 and you've got a pound of coke in the trunk, and the state police pull you over and they arrest you and they take you in, the state's attorney is just going to process you and release you to return later. You will not go in front of a judge on potential detention because it's not within the enumerated categories in the statute. That's unequivocal.
One of the things that frustrates me, one of them, many things that frustrates me about this bill is it was Katie Stewart's bill, right? Across the river in Illinois. She's in District 112. She used to be my state representative, and for some reason they drew a line around my house, and I'm not in her district anymore. But the 112th district is represented by Katie Stewart. She started this bill, but it was a pharmaceutical bill. It was something that had nothing to do with the Safety Act. The Democrats said, yeah, we're going to take that bill, and overnight they turned it into this monstrosity. I mean, you touched on it a little bit here about how they didn't even have time to talk to states' attorneys about it. React to the process by which this bill actually became a law, and J.B. Pritzker was drooling over the opportunity to sign it. What was the priority? Get down to the brass tacks. What was the Democrats' priority to do this in the middle of the night, to hand it over to J.B. Pritzker so he could get his grubby fingers on it and sign it into law? What did they get out of it?
Well, what they got is they pushed a bill through that had no other way of passing the General Assembly except for in the wee hours of the night. They did this 3 days before the new General Assembly in 2021 was set to take over.
So the bottom of the ninth.
So it was the bottom of the ninth in a lame duck session. They did what's called in Illinois, it's called a gut and replace, where they took an otherwise innocuous bill that had been through the House of Representatives, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, they gutted it, replaced it with the Safety Act, and with a matter of hours had passed it and eventually turned it into law. That is how Illinois governs when they're trying to pass a law that's very confrontational, very sensitive. They look for a political weakness in the system, and they'll push it through at a moment's notice without giving anybody the chance to react. That's how they pass this.
You said gut and replace is what that's called. They gut and replace Katie Stewart's bill to make this happen. Katie Stewart, a Democrat, voted against it. She won't come on the show and tell us why it was not good enough for her vote. Why is that?
Well, it wasn't good enough for her vote because she knew how bad it was, right? And keeping in mind, here's what happened. They got the 60 votes in the House of Representatives that they needed. They didn't get more. They've got, 73 or 74 House members from Democrats? They got 60. And they had to browbeat the 60th one to get them to vote with 30 minutes left.
Not a single Republican.
Not a single Republican.
They didn't even have to read it. They couldn't even read it.
But what they were fighting about, the Democrats were fighting amongst themselves that day of who they were going to let out and not have to vote in favor of it to get the 60 that they needed, right? So Katie was lucky that there was someone less vulnerable than her in the pecking order that they were able to get them to vote without making it to Katie. Katie was protected at least from having to vote. But trust me, if they needed her vote,
she'd have given it. She does what she's told.
They would have got it.
By the Democratic Party, not by the people.
So it wasn't her standing up for her people, the 112th. That was her skating by the skin of her teeth, not having to vote for something because somebody else was made to be the patsy.
She should have been the loudest Democrat against it because they did it to her bill.
Man, Tom, I really appreciate hearing the detail because there's only so much you can consume in, the 30-second ads and the mailers and things where you have to get a point across. And just hearing you talk about the specifics, especially of the Safety Act, it's very, very interesting. I live in Illinois too, and one of those things that I've always come across, crime isn't a new problem in Illinois. We tend to, though, at least for me, I'm being selfish here, in the suburbs, we think about that as a city problem a little bit more. And so people talk about Chicago crime and we just shake our heads. We go, gosh, they need to figure that out in Chicago. What I'm concerned about in the suburbs is that coming to my town now.
It's coming.
With the Safety Act, it seems like they're opening the doors to so much of this. What can a good attorney general of Illinois do to not only draw that line around the suburbs for people like me, I don't feel safe again, but also reverse that trend? Because what we're seeing in Illinois and Chicago is something that's decades long. It's just growing, and this would just further that. How can you reverse that trend?
Well, let me make sure. I'm not interested, with all due respect, of drawing a line around the suburbs because that's not fair to the people in the city.
Right.
This issue, and I'm glad we're having this conversation because this issue that's going on and started within our cities, it's a statewide problem. And for those of us, I live in a rural community. You live in the suburbs. It's our problem too, and we need to take it serious. So to the extent that this horrific law has created a conversation outside the city is a good thing because they need our help, right? One of the things we can specifically do is to repeal the Safety Act, repeal it legislatively or have it invalidated through the court of law. Kwame Raoul has already said that he's going to defend this law. He has to defend it because his top financial contributors have told him to do it. If I'm the Attorney General, I will join the now 58 or 60 state's attorneys in Illinois out of the 102 that have sued the governor and the Attorney General. The Attorney General has been sued by 60 state's attorneys. Think about that. I'd be ashamed of myself. But he's yet going to fight and defend the governor because of political survival. We can get rid of this thing. And there's pieces of that law that are worth discussion. But the inequity where Annie started this off, here's the thing. They think that if we create this law, we're going to have poor people that otherwise couldn't get out of jail are now going to not be in jail solely because of money. That's a talking point that this law does not even address. Because if a judge is inclined to set a bail at an amount that you can't get out, under this law, the judge can just detain you without offering you any bail. So how does that help any alleged inequity, okay? And that's why I've always laughed about it. You're going, it's inequitable because the judge sets a bail and you can't afford the bail. Yeah, I'm like, okay, so now the judge can just hold you without giving you bail. Do you think he's just going to let you walk free because of this new law? No, he's just going to detain you and hold you until your trial, which has constitutional problems that I've talked about. It's not for today. But the alleged inequities that they're talking about, this law doesn't even address. And that's why I go back to where I started. This was a very poor attempt to try to satisfy the guilt of these politicians who are decades have avoided and been unsuccessful in trying to address the issues within our city that has plagued their city, these communities forever with the crime. It's, again, lack of economic opportunity. And, so for you being in the suburbs, I'm kind of glad you're talking about it right now, because maybe with folks such as yourself and others in the suburbs, we'll finally get our politicians to address these issues.
Yeah.
Tom DeVore in studio with us right now. He's running for Attorney General in the state of Illinois as the Republican candidate. And we're watching the polls that come in. Ryan talks about polls every day in Wiggins America. We are seeing shift after shift after shift of solid Dem to leans Dem to maybe toss-up. Some toss-ups that are leaning Republican right now. Illinois has a really, really insulated wall around a potential red wave. But there is a shelf where that red wave could come in. I know that you'll be real with me, Tom DeVore. I know you won't blow smoke.
Nope.
What are you expecting, or what are your honest hopes for what happens next Tuesday in Illinois?
At a minimum, next Tuesday, the people of Illinois are going to show this nation that we're not as blue as they try to pretend we are. That's going to be an absolute certainty. The last 2.5, 3 years, Governor Pritzker has ruled over the people of this state like a tyrant. And that has changed a lot of minds in this state to become convinced that those progressive Democrat, not blue dog Democrats like I grew up with, those were real people. These progressive Democrat ideologues are destroying freedom and liberty. And when they started harming the children of the suburbs, the soccer moms that we're now hearing about on national TV, they're all of a sudden switching from Democrat to Republican. They hurt their kids. They took their kids' high school educations and college educations and destroyed them. The emotional harm that's been done to these children is going to last a generation. The loss of learning is going to last a generation. And these moms will not forget that. And that is not going to go well for J.B. Pritzker, Kwame Raoul, and the rest of these Democrats in the General Assembly that sat idly by for 2.5 years and watched their children suffer. It's not going to go well for them. So at a minimum, we're going to turn this state into a purple state, in my opinion.
I'm looking forward to it. And I know that there are so many people who have stepped into the political fray for this campaign cycle. Have you ever run for anything before?
I was on the county board 2 years ago, or 10 years ago for 2 years. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I spent most of the last 3 years fighting for people and small businesses and families. But one of the things I was also doing is encouraging everyday people to get involved in office. Because there's one thing I know for sure. The political class, Democrat and Republican, is what's destroyed this state. Not just the Democrats. The political elite in the Republican Party are just as culpable as the Democrats. And the only one that can push back on them are good, honest, hardworking, everyday people that step up to do the right thing and just not trying to be career politicians.
I've been watching Illinois politics for some time now, and I've said this before, and I will say it until I'm blue in the face. But the idea that we're told what kind of Republican can win in the state of Illinois, they're not winning. There aren't any. We've been told that this is what you have to do to get elected as a Republican in the state of Illinois and in Cook County and in Chicago, but they don't win. Why not lose with some dignity and integrity?
Well, you talked about the the lady, the Democrat, this bill over in the Collinsville, Madison County area, they told my friend Jen Cordy that she was not the right kind of Republican. And she showed them wrong. And she is the right kind of Republican because she's stepping up to fight for families and just do the right thing. And she's not going to pander to, these ideologues in the Republican Party who say you need to be the right kind. Because do you think they believe I'm the right kind? They don't. And have they ever won an election? No, they can't win elections because they have no core values that they're trying to stand up for. And so I'm not here to beat on the Democratic Party, or the Republican Party, but they've not been successful in Illinois. And it's people like Jen and me and a lot of others that have stepped up this election cycle that just said, we're just here to help people. We're not here to be politicians. I think that's going to make a big difference this year.
How much do you think also that what we're doing right now here in 2022, I mean, Is it make or break in 2022? If we don't do it now, it doesn't happen? Or do you think the momentum extends past next Tuesday?
The momentum has to go past next Tuesday. Even if we win, the momentum has to continue. My friend Jason Plummer, who's a senator in our part of the world, told me one time when him and I were talking, he's an intelligent man. He said, if the people of our state wake up and they never go back to sleep, that's the establishment politicians on both parties. That's their worst nightmare. Because the people will take back over and they'll solve these problems. So even if we're not as completely successful as we want to be, they can't give up because that's what people like J.B. Pritzker want. That's what tyrants want. They want people to give up and to just look up to him on his throne to solve the world's problems and solve the state's problems. That's the worst kind of government we can have. We have to have a government where the problems are solved by people and not by wannabe tyrants.
Well, Tom DeVore, online at tomdevore.com. Please check out his candidacy. Your last plea, what can people do other than obviously go vote for you and for the Republican ticket in Illinois and in Missouri, of course? Anything else you can ask of them week out?
They need to overperform is what we need to do. It's very important. When they always talk about in our state, and again, in Missouri it's different, but it's still the same, is that the only reason that the Democrats are continuing to be so successful in Illinois, there's a lot of reasons. One of them is the Republicans are disheartened and they don't participate. If we have high turnout this election cycle, I'm talking 60, 70, 75% of the Republicans, we're going to win all of these races.
Yeah.
We will win them all because the Democrats are not going to overcome. The governor of Illinois, he talks about abortion. Not because it's a hot topic in Illinois right now. Abortion rights are well protected in Illinois, regardless of your opinion on it. Mm-hmm. He talks about it because he's trying to get the Democrats off the couch to go vote because they're not enamored with what he's been doing either. If the Republicans turn out, everybody that they know votes, will win every one of these elections.
Well, you heard it here on the Annie Frey Show. We are less than a week out, 6 days from Election Day in Illinois. You can go vote right now. Take people with you. Don't kidnap them. Although after the first day, you can do that and not have to be detained, which I don't recommend at all. No kidnapping, people. Kidnapping and crime is bad. And we stand by that on the Annie Frey Show. Tom DeVore, thank you for being in studio with us.
Thank you.
Folks that are listening right now, if you're in your car and you're at lunch, make sure you download that Odyssey app, AUDACY. And if you didn't hear the whole conversation with Tom DeVore, rewind to the beginning of the show because he's been here since noon, and we are grateful for it. Let's take a quick break. Wiggins America when we come back.
1,000 other boys could never reach you. How could I have been one? I saw the world spin beneath you.
This is the Annie Frey Show.
Scattered like ice from the spoon.
Find the podcast, on-demand audio, and more at 971talk.com/Annie.
Coming down, the world turned over. Angels fall without you there. And I go on as you get colder. Or are you someone's prayer?
Today is November 2nd, which means the midterm election